Okay then, so the next philosophy to have a look at is called Judicial Restraint. Okay, let's change the slides, here we go. Okay, in terms of the beliefs of this philosophy, they are uncomfortable with the power of judicial review. Okay, they think it should be used very sparingly. They've got a strong preference for precedence. So in other words, they don't like to overrule decisions made by the Supreme Court in the past. They also don't like to overturn decisions made by the elected branches either. They believe that judicial power should be kept very much in restraint, hence their name. And when they do rule on cases, very often judges from this philosophy tend to do it on very narrow points of law. So rather than overturning entire laws, they might just overturn a little bit of the law. They often make their decisions on quite narrow kind of precedents. And I suppose typical of their view is this idea that the constitution is unclear in many places, and so as an unelected body, they should not overrule the elected branches, nor early decisions made by the court, unless there is a clear constitutional breach occurred by one of the elected branches or by the court in the past. So they tend to defer to the other branches and make any changes on fairly narrow areas when possible. Okay, the views are sometimes typified by this character, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was on the Supreme Court 1902 to 1932, so a little while ago, I think it's fair to say. He said that a judge, his role was to enforce even laws that I believe to embody mistakes. In other words, it's not my job to legislate from the branch, it's my job to uphold laws that have been made either by the Constitution or by the elected branches, even if I think they are wrong. The current Chief Justice, John Roberts, I would suggest is quite a strong judicial restrainer. And he said in 2015, in one of the Obama cases, King versus Burwell, he said, in a democracy, the power to make law rests with those chosen by the people. In other words, it's not for us judges to make the law, it's for Congress and the presidency and those elected branches, I suppose including state laws as well, not for judges. And these are kind of typical kind of views of people who hold the philosophy of judicial restraint. Okay, so let's look at some examples of judicial restraint kind of inaction, so to speak. The first case we've got is NFIB versus Sibelius. This is the Obamacare one, the National Federation of Independent Businesses versus Sibelius. In this decision, the Supreme Court declared that Obamacare was constitutional. It was a 5-4 decision. It was the the 4 Liberal justices, Ginsburg, Sotomayor, Kagan and Breyer, plus John Roberts. And another example, so again, this shows the deference for the elected branches. John Roberts is kind of saying, look, the elected branch have decided on Obamacare. It's not our job to, unless there's been a clear constitutional breach, which there hasn't, it's not our job to overturn it. A clearer ruling for him was on this case, Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission 2018. This is what's sometimes called the gay cake case. There's also an example in the UK Supreme Court as well. Basically, a gay couple had gone to a cake shop, one owned by some devout Christians. They wanted them to make this cake and it had, 2 males kissing each other or something on the cake. They refused, so they took up the issue, and the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, which is one of the kind of quangos, I suppose, of Colorado state government, they took the cake shop to court for denying making this cake for this gay couple. So the Civil Rights Commission took up the case on behalf of this gay couple and took the shop to court. It was a 7-2 decision by the Supreme Court, and the decision was to uphold the cake shop's action in denying baking the cake. Again, there's a similar result in Britain from our Supreme Court as well. But the decision was quite narrow. It wasn't over, which is what some of the Conservatives wanted it to be over. Some Republicans wanted it to be over, they wanted it to overturn Obama versus Hodges, but the decision was much more narrow. And the decision was that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission did not employ religious neutrality when they prosecuted the cake shop. So rather than doing it about, as many Republicans and many Conservatives wanted, this was to be about gay rights, actually the decision came down to had the Colorado Civil Rights Commission acted in a neutral way when they prosecuted the cake shop. So they did it on a very narrow area, criticising the Civil Rights Commission, not the wider issue of gay rights and gay marriage and things of that nature, which is kind of typical of judicial restrainers. If you're going to change it, do something quite narrow as opposed to the broader kind of area. Okay, this has been criticised. Oh, one was come a bit earlier. Some argue that this view is far too deferential to the elected branches. So those, for example, many conservatives who are against Obamacare say it breaks the spirit of the Constitution, if not the Constitution itself. The judicial restrainers tend to disagree and say, the elected branches have made this decision. Unless it's a clear breach, then we'll keep it going. Okay, it's too deferential to past mistakes. So again, many social conservatives want to overturn Roe versus Wade. People like Roberts are very reluctant to, because it's a previous decision made by the Supreme Court. They'll make decisions on abortion on very narrow aspects of abortion, like late-term abortions, for example, or things of that nature, but not the wider issue of abortion rights. They're very reluctant and won't overturn precedent with Roe versus Wade. And the same with Oval versus Hodges as well. And this is very frustrating for many Conservatives who believe that, this law should be removed. Many Liberals argue that by being so reluctant to change precedent and change previous decisions, then actually it may allow abuses of civil liberties to continue. And they will point out, judicial restrainers would have been very reluctant to overturn Plessy versus Ferguson, for example. And so, again, I suppose it's a similar criticism to point two, just from the other side. Okay, and judicial restraint is particularly unwilling to counteract the precedent in regard to foreign policy. In fact, the Supreme Court in general is quite reluctant to get involved in the powers of the presidency regarding foreign policy. And one example is Komatsu versus the United States. This was a case in 1944 where Japanese Americans, mainly in California, were actually interned during the Second World War. The American government perceived them as being a threat to national security, because obviously the Americans were at war with Germany and with Japan. So many of them were interned in camps. This obviously goes against many of their civil rights and civil liberties. There's a Supreme Court case in 1944, but again, the Supreme Court deferred to the elected branch, i.e. the presidency, and saying there's no case to answer. They actually, interestingly, overturned this decision in the 1990s, and compensation was given to some of those surviving Japanese Americans. In terms of Supreme Court judges on the current court who have this view, I think, as I said before, John Roberts, I would argue, is very much a judicial restrainer. And then these two characters are a bit early to tell. Both of Trump's appointees, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, I'll put possibly question mark for both of them. They've only been on the court a couple of years, haven't they? It's a little early to tell, although I think Gorsuch is probably not quite in this philosophy. If I was to put him into any, I'll put him into the next one that we're looking at. But Roberts, I would say, is certainly of this philosophical viewpoint. Okay then, and then this third one we're going to have a look at probably in the next video because I'm running out of time.